you doing today?
I'm well. How are you?
Pretty good. It's a Friday and sunny over here on this side of the neighborhood, so things are coming along. Wanted to have you on our podcast today because I think the world of you, and we've known one another for quite a few years now, and both kind of imports, exports in and out of the city. So I wanted to talk a little bit about your background and have you share where you came from, a little bit of the storyline, because I think it's critical, and you've got such an inspirational, meaningful way of looking at community and looking at business and the things you're doing now. I think your background's pretty interesting, and I think folks would like to know. So give us a little bit of insight on where you came from and sort of the inspiration of you.
Sure. So my family is from Ghana, West Africa, but I was born in Philadelphia and raised. I like to say I was raised on the East Coast. DC is my home, but I was born in Philly. I've lived in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Maryland, DC, and Virginia. But I went to middle school and high school in DC, and that's the place that I consider home base. I did college in Atlanta. I wanted to get off of the East Coast, and Atlanta is just a little further south, but not, but a whole different culture, as you know, about the South and Southeast. Mm-hmm. And then I went back into DC for two real reasons. One is I thought I wanted to go to law school, but first I wanted to work for a couple of years to make sure, given the time and expense, that was something worth doing. Mm-hmm. And then two, I found a new appreciation for home. I think when you grow up, and especially in the States, there's everything seems accessible. Mm-hmm. And so, I actually looked at the University of Michigan for college. I looked at schools in the Southeast where I ended up. I looked at places on the West Coast, and I really, after, trying something else, I was like, oh, home's not that bad. So I wanted to experience some of the things that I experienced in DC as a kid, as an adult. There's lots of universities there. Yeah, exactly. There's lots of universities there: Georgetown, GW, University of Maryland, Howard, which I ended up going to law school. And it was just good to be in a place with other 20-somethings trying to figure out the world as well. Yeah. I ended up going to law school at Howard and kind of figured out during that period that I had two real interests. One is sports and the other is politics. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to see how I could work in those, and really didn't know how. No one, college doesn't teach you how to get a job, right? No. It teach you something.
You spend a lot of money without knowing really what to do with it afterwards then.
Exactly. I was a political science major. I knew I wasn't going to be a social studies teacher or a professor. Yeah. And I thought maybe I'd go to law school, but I didn't know what that meant, really. My dad was a lawyer, a litigator, sole practitioner, would go to court every day. Mm-hmm. My mom went to business school and law school and worked in a corporate environment, mainly doing human resources. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, oh, you can be a lawyer if you go to law school, and you could not be a lawyer if you go to law school. Those were the two examples that I had. And so I decided to go with the thought that I was not going to be a practicing attorney for the majority of my career, but that I did want to find a way into sports or politics. And luckily I've been able to find my way into both. So I worked at the National Football League's headquarters during my first 2 summers in law school. I worked at the United States Senate during my third year in law school, and that kind of triggered a series of events that landed me in the White House for almost 6 years under President Obama in a number of different offices. When I left there, I thought, again, I want to try something new, get out of DC, get off of the East Coast maybe, and go back into sports. And the opportunity with the Pistons presented itself in a really cool way, because I have been able to be involved with the business there, which has been great to see the economic growth in Detroit over the past few years. But I've also been able to be involved in the community side and running the Pistons Foundation, using some of the experience that I had in DC, where the redevelopment in DC over the past 20 years has been stark. Downtown DC looks little like it did when away from the monuments when I grew up, and in a lot of good and some bad ways. And being able to be a small part of the redevelopment in Detroit, but still being able to bring the sensibilities that I have of trying to reinvent the wheel a better way this time than it was done last time. On the community side has been helpful also.
Speaking of DC, I spent some time there. My degree is in international relations. And then I went, and my first gig was at the Justice Department, communication between Justice and White House. A little before your time, I was with when Clinton and Janet Reno were ruling heads, and it is monumental. I mean, being in Washington D.C., and if you're doing anything from Capitol Hill to the White House, anything within politics, it's pretty monumental when you're there. And there's also an interesting kind of wave that I felt. I was right out of college, so early 20s. Wave that you feel of this like youthful energy, but then you have this whole nother bubble. Thinking of politics and thinking of politics now, you have this whole other bubble of people that are the decision makers politically, that you wonder how much are their feet really on the ground? Do they really see what's really going on within their districts? Always a question to ask. So this sort of tie back to you with community and really taking politics and political science, PS, and then looking at law and then integrating that within a home base, whether that's DC or in this case now your new home for the moment, at least with Detroit. It's fascinating to me when minds like yours come into cities like Detroit, because the impact of what you've seen and what you've done to be able to translate that here, you bring a wealth of information and insight that people that are strictly from a city don't necessarily have. So how have you been, and Detroit's an interesting place. This is now your new home the last couple of years. How have you been accepted here? Has it been a warm welcome? Of course, it seems like you came in through the Pistons, so that might be an easier thing because everybody loves the Pistons. But, kind of walk us through how you were, accepted into this new home of Detroit, and I'm obviously seeing that there's a lot of impact that you can make within the community. How was that experience for you at the beginning?
So I bought a place here, so hopefully I'm now considered at least a partial Detroiter.
Good.
Not an immediate flight risk, but no, and you touch on some interesting points there. And one of the reasons that I like the opportunity with the Pistons is for the point where you started with, which is a lot of times, and I ended up, in the senior staff meetings at the White House and all of that stuff, you don't get to meet the people who are being impacted by the policies, right? And it's not necessarily because your feet aren't on the ground. It's just you're working your butt off every day from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. midnight, and then it's wash, rinse, repeat. I was there for 5 full years. I served almost 5 3/4, so there was a partial year. 3 of those 5 years, I worked 364 days, like in the office, right? Not like I was working remotely from somewhere else. I was in the office 364 days a year in 2011 and 2012 and 2013, and remember them vividly. And when you're doing that, when you're working that hard, it's hard to do other things. First of all, take emotional and mental health days and see family and friends and travel, but also, you don't have a lot of time to go out and meet people unless it's in your job, right? Yeah. So I often refer to my White House experience as great because you get to see how decisions are made for the country. You get the 30,000-foot view, but my time in Detroit has been great as well because, I get to see some of that, but I also get to make decisions that affect people and talk to the people about the decisions that affect them, whether it's the Pistons moving or things we're doing in the community or otherwise. So I think to answer the second part of your question, partly because I came in through the Pistons, I did get a relatively warm welcome. Yeah. I made sure very purposefully to listen before I talk, just because I think Detroiters are a proud bunch. And
Yeah.
one thing that they don't like is people that come in and think that they know about Detroit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Still I try to wait until I'm asked before I give my opinion, because
Hmm.
it's an opinion formed in other places, but I think some of it has relevance and maybe some of it doesn't.
Hmm.
So I got a pretty warm welcome when I came. Partly because I took the extra step of calling all my friends in DC and New York and
Cool.
Atlanta and saying, hey, we're pretty good friends, right? They'd respond, yeah. And then I'd say, give me one person that, grew up in Detroit, is in
Sure.
Detroit, went to Michigan State or Eastern or Central, like someone with a Michigan and Detroit tie.
Hmm.
And that's all I'm asking. I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for you to visit. You
Yeah.
can if you want. I want one warm handoff so that I know someone on the ground. Cause I knew two people when I moved here.
That's an excellent, actually, piece of advice for people that move anywhere, and especially to Detroit, to your point, because Detroit is unique in that I think that it is pretty proprietary to what is theirs or ours as a city. I've lived in Metro Detroit my whole life. Um, that's interesting though, to have that, as you said, a warm handoff with folks that have a connection. And so that's, I mean, you're in then you've got an insight that's firsthand. There's no question about that.
You get an insight, you get to meet
Yeah.
people, and maybe you don't get the benefit of the doubt, but you're able to break into the group, right?
Yeah.
Which can be harder as a new person if you don't know anyone.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful to all those people that helped give me people in Detroit so that I could help to grow my network.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, every time I've seen you out, you've been surrounded by people. So I think your network has has grown
it,
exponentially.
it started with
Yeah.
two people, so we're past
Yeah.
two now.
Much past, what is it, like 6 degrees of separation with Kevin Bacon. No, that's awesome stuff. But then you start feeling like home. It's really, what makes home for you? Is it the place that you live in? Is it the people that you surround yourself with? Is it the ideals that you share with what you're doing within that location? What's your definition of home?
I think for me, it's the people.
Yeah.
I'm pretty. I've moved. I lived in. I didn't count the states as I was saying them, but I've lived in probably almost 10 states.
Yeah.
So I'm very detached and disconnected from the places that I'm living physically. Like an apartment's just an apartment. I bought a
Hmm.
home, but I like it, but it's still just a home that I'm not going to be sad when I sell, or
Yeah.
if I live there for 30 years, I'll be fine with that too.
Yeah.
So I think it's the people that really make the difference.
Hmm.
And the people here have been tremendous. Everyone that's here wants to be here.
Yeah.
They, for the most part,
True.
they've had opportunities to move either to the suburbs, or in the case of transplants, they've come from other places, whether it's for
Hmm.
family or for jobs.
Hmm.
And so you do feel that pride of living in Detroit and being around a community who
Hmm.
may have different views of how to make Detroit better and what the future looks like in Detroit, but all, I believe, genuinely want to make it better and want the future to be bright. The thing that I tell people from outside, and like, what do you mean there's a lot of pride? That sounds like, you can't insult their football teams. And it's not really like that, but you walk down the street and you see Detroit is the New Black. You have podcasts called Detroitisit.
Yeah.
You have businesses like Detroit Blows, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I can't name a business in Washington, D.C. that's named after these.
Interesting. That's
That
an interesting point. I would walk through wherever I was traveling over the years, as I have, New York or Europe, and just about every day on the street, I'd see something Detroit, a
yeah,
hat, a bag, a t-shirt, something Tigers, something Red Wings, something Detroit. I would comment on this to friends of mine. I'm like, there we go again. I just walked around the corner and that guy has, a Detroit hat on. I mean, constantly. And I never noticed that with LA. I never noticed it maybe with the NYC hats, but not to the extent of Detroit. That's very true.
yeah. If you put sports teams aside, I mean, I'm sure we can name one, but there's not a there's not a Brooklyn is it, right? There's not
Right.
a there's
Right.
not a New York. Maybe there's a New York deli or something like that, but
Yeah.
there's not a New York name
Yeah.
your business, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, no, very true, very true. I was in Positano, I think, a couple of years ago, and this guy has this like Detroit T-shirt, and I'm like, "Where are you from?" He goes, "Lansing." I'm like, "Oh, of all places, of all people."
yeah,
It's kind of it's a very I say that this city doesn't even maybe even realize the free PR it has globally and the love
yeah.
affair that people have with it globally that are from here. There's like advocates and ambassadors to Detroit everywhere.
I was in Accra, Ghana 2 years ago, and I'm walking down the street, and I see a couple, and just kind of waved. And as I'm walking by, I look at his shirt, and it was a Red Wing shirt.
Yeah.
And so I go tap the guy on the shoulder. I'm like, hey, like, what are you doing in Ghana? He's like, oh, I came to visit as part of a Michigan State program, and I loved it. So I brought my girlfriend back
No
for
way.
a week, and I was like, wow, like that's
Amazing.
kind of cool.
Amazing. Amazing stuff. So are you living in the city with the
I am.
house? Yeah.
I live in Lafayette Park.
Okay. Don't give us your address because we'll be tapping on the door.
As
Lafayette
long as
Park's
as long as
awesome.
you bring cookies, I'm fine.
Oh, you got it. You got it. Um, that's a pretty cool place, Lafayette Park. There's a lot of interesting energy that's going on over there.
I like it. We talked earlier about what makes a home, and I said the
Yeah.
people, and that I didn't really care about the place.
Yeah.
I agree that Lafayette Park's a pretty cool place, and
Very.
I lived there for a year. I didn't really realize that until COVID.
Yeah.
And staying in my townhome, kind of looking at some of the architecture around. I went on
Mhm.
MoMA's site and looked at
Mhm.
Mies van der Rohe's
Mhm.
original drawings.
Mhm.
Went out every day in the park, and sometimes I just lay on a blanket to get outside, and other times I
Mhm.
use the park as my track and run around the outside.
Mhm.
And I didn't need to leave, and I also didn't feel constrained. So
Mhm.
it was great to be in that place during that time.
You bring up also an interesting point on space and design. I did a lot within that with a previous life of mine that was pretty heavily focused in on design and architecture on the media side. And really, when you have smart thinking to architecture and design, you can build your own world within, let's say, the four walls of a space, because you can find um, escapes within it also, even though, I mean, with Mies, it's a pretty minimalistic, experience, but there's so much exposure that you have to different experiences within it. I would say, I haven't lived in a Mies home, but it's pretty spectacular when you look
Yeah,
at design and the thoughtfulness behind something.
definitely. And
Yeah.
it's a great community as well. People that have been there, whose families have been there since it opened in the 50s.
Yeah.
To people that I know who are more recent transplants, but found Lafayette Park to be great as well.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to just walk around and see that community, and it really, at least from what I've heard from some of the residents that have been there for a long time, it hasn't
Mm-hmm.
changed that much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mostly because the buildings are static, they're not moving,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a co-op, so they
Right.
interview the people and try to get good people in there.
Yeah.
Lucky I got in.
Yeah, I'm sure you had a lot to pass through. Right. Do you walk downtown?
I do. I
Yeah.
do.
Or
It's
bike? Yeah.
it's funny. I've been saying since I moved to Detroit that I need to get a bike,
Yeah.
and I haven't gotten one. So I walk or I scooter
Yeah.
down there, and it's a quick 15-minute walk. Sometimes I'll take Gratiot and go by Ford Field and walk towards
Yeah.
the Belt. Sometimes I'll go down Lafayette and walk through Greektown, or go down to the riverfront and walk that
Cool.
way. So there's
Cool.
lots of different ways to get everywhere.
And you've got the DeQuinter Cut that's right by you too, which is
Yeah, so
awesome.
spend some
Yeah.
time on the Cut, and it's a good
Yeah.
way to get up to Eastern Market or down to the
I know.
riverfront.
I know.
I like Eastern Market a lot, which is
Yeah.
a very convenient
Yeah.
place to both shop and have some leisure
You know
time.
that market is the oldest running market in the States.
Really,
Hmm.
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that.
Continuous. Yeah.
In DC, there's an Eastern market as well, and it's
Mm-hmm.
the Eastern market of Detroit dwarfs it in size.
Incredible. Yeah, I hear it's I think it might be one of the largest, but I know it's the oldest, which is amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah. So all this good stuff. So let's chat a little bit about what you're thinking and kind of moving into with and have done within community sports. I'm a believer on my end, just to put my 2 cents in. Team sports really matter, and for so many reasons, whether it's building love between another, colleague, whether it's showing sharing and how do you give and let go of something, whether it's showing pain and how do you get over pain, and both physical and sort of mental pain. And then also coming from a professional sports league perspective, you have such an opportunity for youth to look at you and the team aspirationally and what could happen with them potentially also one day.
Yep.
So this community impact, social impact, family support, and just this notion of giving and taking and friendships that are formed through that, I think are critical within team sports in particular. So, but yeah, what are you up to? How do you look at that?
Yeah, no, and the two big parts of my responsibility at the Pistons, one is working on our team that tries to find new ventures and long-term business planning, which led to us moving from the Palace to Little Caesars Arena.
Awesome.
To play our games, and also moving our employees from the Palace offices to the Pistons Performance Center in New Center, Detroit, or just south of Grand Boulevard.
Yeah. Beautiful space, by the way. Gorgeous.
Oh, thank you.
Gorgeous.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wish we could have done this in our podcast studio, but our building's not open.
Yeah.
So those have been two of our bigger business initiatives, and then we've kind of redone the foundation even before we moved to Detroit, frankly, to make sure that it was more in line with some of the programming that we were doing and reaching people in Detroit, which has been a focus of ours. But we think about our platform as, when you think of the Pistons, what do you think of? And you named a lot of it. We're able to bring people together, right? We're able to bring people together on the community side. We're able to bring people together at games. We're able to bring people together at water coolers to talk about the game last night or what the team should do. Like at its core, sports is important because it brings people together. And so how do we use that platform, to win games and excite people, but also to do the right thing for our business and for the community. And so moving to Detroit was an important part of that. There was a disconnect between fans in the city and the Pistons, which I think that if we haven't solved, we're working to solve. I don't know that the Palace had a lot of great memories, and I know a lot of people were sad to see it go. But this is one of the ways that I think my being from somewhere else was helpful. I had no idea where Auburn Hills was until I got here. I came for my job interview, and I got in a Uber at the Book Cadillac because I assumed Auburn Hills was a neighborhood in Detroit, or maybe just outside, some of the other state arenas are. And I said, take me to Auburn Hills. I tried to get an Uber. I couldn't get an Uber. Got in a Metro cab, and said, take me to Auburn Hills. And $110 later, I showed up at Auburn Hills, which was still the most expensive. I should have gotten that expense after I got the job. That's the most expensive interview I've ever had. And so, and then, talking to people around the city that loved the Pistons and had never or rarely been to a game because of the distance. All of that is disheartening. And I know that Auburn Hills had a lot of great memories, but I think there will be some created in Detroit as well. And to the extent that Detroit does well, I think that the area and the state will also do well. There's, the economic development in Albany, even though it's the capital, is much less important than the economic development in New York City, right?
Sure.
As the biggest city, Detroit needs to be that shining star. On the community side, we really had to think about how do we bring people together and have the most impact. And we think of that through partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
So in the past, and we had to ruffle a few feathers. Organizations. Mr. Davidson was very generous, and an organization would ask for $5 or $10 or $20,000, and the Pistons would do it.
Mm-hmm.
But there was no real strategy behind it. We didn't know. We knew that money was helping organizations. We didn't know how.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we've tried to do in the last 5 years that I've been here is let's have a strategy behind what we're giving. Not that we won't give to anyone, but there are certain areas that we can add to in addition to the money to make that gift more valuable.
Mm-hmm.
So whether that's health and fitness, especially basketball, but really any sport, and making sure kids are active, education, mentoring, equality generally, which is what we put our social justice initiatives under. Black History Month and our equality platform, Women's History Month, Hoops for Troops, which is our veterans platform, that all fits under equality. And we want to make sure that we're really able to give more than $1. So we'll give $1 to organizations, and we've actually increased our giving almost 8-fold since I've been there. But we also are more targeted when we give and make sure that we can highlight them through our social media platform because we know the work that we're doing. We can highlight them at a game and bring out either the participants or the leaders who thought of these innovative programs. We can partner with them off the court and have our players show up and have them involved, which were not things that we could do regularly before just because we weren't true partners. It was more of a grantor-grantee relationship as opposed to a full partnership relationship.
Yeah. So so many things just now to talk about. I'm a big believer in strategy. I think strategy matters. It's professional deformation of mine, I think too. And I notice also, as you mentioned, and this is kind of a hot topic for me, with a lot of foundations and nonprofits where money ends up going simply to support something without really thinking through what the ROI or return on investment is to both the giver and the receiver and also the community. So sort of threefold. Because I do agree with you that it's not just about giving the money, but where does that money go? How is it being utilized? What visually, what are the challenges and changes that are happening, but also long-term effects? Is this something that's completely focused in on a geography and the geography, whatever the neighborhood is, for example, or that community are they being helped within this 5-year period of time? And what are those change factors that are really showcasing that change? Or individuals, so for example, how many individuals are going to if there's a scholarship fund, what are they doing and what is their life like 10 years down the road after this money is invested in them? On the sports side, same thing. So I'm with you. I'm a big believer that a lot of money, I believe, was spent with cities, within cities, and in Detroit, maybe haplessly with not malintention, simply because they wanted to be part of the story. But I think strategically placing money and really noticing what you can do with that money is key. And it's key moving forward, especially to me, especially within the situation that we're now in within Detroit.
Agreed. Yeah.
Right?
And the other thing is that I think you and I both bring a business hat to it. So you have to have metrics to make sure that things are working. So you're not just, because if you're throwing money down a pipe endlessly, you're wasting their time and yours. Yeah. Right. So how are we tracking what we're doing so we can make sure that the programs or outcomes that we want are happening? And if we're not, it doesn't mean you have to move away from that organization or that individual. Right. But it's like you got to try stuff that works for them too. Yeah. You can put as much money into schools as you want. If the test scores aren't going up, then it's the PR thing and not a substantive program. Totally
agree. And then also on the social justice side, so coming where you're coming from, specifically from Ghana, with the family, I'm from Europe originally, and Europe has a little bit of a different tendency, and I'm now talking specifically on race relations, on equality and equality within this country in particular, and obviously within Detroit. Um, I'm an immigrant, I'm a woman, there's a whole nother component to that conversation too. I wasn't born here, but I've lived here my whole life. And with your background, there's so much going on right now, whether it's on the health side, whether it's, of course, on the social injustice side, where underserved communities, many of them are Black communities or diverse communities. How do you see this? There's 101, things to talk about within just that sentence, but what's like your take on what's going on now?
So I would say that I'm hopeful,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm also not optimistic, right?
Hmm.
I want to make, growing up Black in America is a unique experience.
Yeah.
My parents had a different experience growing up in Ghana, so I didn't have uh, the mentorship in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I kind of had to figure it out on my own with friends who
Mm-hmm.
were also, whose parents may have been uh, born in the States, and had that history. But, as kids, you're just kids, right?
Yeah.
And there hasn't been anything, at least in my lifetime, that's been like this, and that's
Mm-hmm.
where the hope comes from. But I
Mm-hmm.
also I don't want to get my hopes up too much, because there's so much work that needs to be done in every
Yeah.
area of life. So that's where I say that it's not that I guess maybe not optimistic was the wrong term, but I'm cognizant of the fact that police brutality and the killing of and murder of Black men and women is just one area that
Yeah.
needs to be fixed, right? There's the entire criminal justice system, which
Yeah.
I know all too
We
well as a
talk about
lawyer.
that. Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
economic opportunities, there's housing and redlining and community building. There's even in sports, there's the NBA has one Black owner, and it's Michael Jordan, right? There
Wow.
are more Black billionaires.
Really? I didn't know that. Well, I mean, I didn't even think about that. My
Yeah,
God.
the
Jeez.
NFL, I don't believe the NFL has any. Hockey doesn't have any majority
Crazy.
owners. Same with baseball, from what I know. So, that makes it tough to have role models on the business side, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I do think that the fact that we can have this conversation, where even 2 months ago we might have been more hesitant to have it or
Mm-hmm.
have it in the
Mm-hmm.
public sphere,
Mm-hmm.
is a sign of progress. But I want progress to continue, and I mean, obviously for Black Americans and Black people around the world. But I know that there are others that are discriminated against in various forms,
Mm-hmm.
and I think those conversations need to be had
Mm-hmm.
as well.
Mm-hmm.
But in the moment, I think this is the moment for us to come to terms with how Black Americans are treated by the police, how Black Americans are treated by their fellow citizens,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully something good comes out of it. Similar to what I think, this is incomplete as well, what
Yeah.
happened in the Me Too movement, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think that movements are far from perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has their different views about what the goals should be of
Mm-hmm.
the movement and of the protest. But and I'm not a woman, so please
Mm-hmm.
correct me if I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But as a woman in the United States, I believe, and this is from talking to everyone, to my mom, my cousins, to
Yeah.
friends, that they would feel more comfortable reporting a coworker or even really just anyone in the public that treated them inappropriately,
Mm-hmm.
versus 3 years ago, where maybe you would do it if it was a date, but if it was in the workplace, you might worry about whether you're going to lose your job or not.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that we're far from solved. I'm not trying to
Mm-hmm.
say that, but
Mm-hmm.
I hope that we're in a whether it's one step or two steps or three steps better than we were a few
Mm-hmm.
years ago, and I hope the same for Black issues as well.
It's again 1,001 things to say over all of this. I mean, these are things that I've been thinking about as it is over the years, just because I do. Um, and I hope that we also had been cognizant on what we've done as a media platform on Detroitisit in particular since the beginning. So we launched almost now 3 years ago, and I believe we have a very wide-ranging voice with what we cover and how we cover it. But I agree with you that the conversation has started more aggressively now. You know, it also started in the 60s in many ways, and then it, you know, kind of did a nosedive again. My fear is that, and it's human nature, people get used to things, you know, it's, so with the Me Too movement, which was incredible, I think, what was it, the largest march in Washington, when was that? I don't even remember now, 3-4 years ago.
Yep.
And then it happened again the following year, but, you know, squelched. So I am eager to see that moment when, as I kind of say, things go in trends, as opposed to me, a movement has a beginning and an end, meaning there's a resolve to an end. And there needs to be a lot of policy that needs to be changed, as you noted. There needs to be a lot of understanding, and not necessarily from a heated perspective, but true conversations like this. You know, I'm not a Black man, you're not a white woman or an immigrant woman. But having very open discussion, I think, is a key necessity. I've
Definitely.
always done that in my life. I'm sure you have in many ways too. You know, I've also felt within a city like Detroit on my end, and this isn't about me, but there are gentle steps I need to take as a white person, female or male, within a city like Detroit. You know, am I qualified enough? Do I understand the nuances of the community enough? You know, especially as a media platform. And I take a lot of care. I try to take a lot of care to be as cognizant of how we do what we do. I personally do a lot of volunteering within communities and churches, within the Black community in particular. I'm fascinated by family structures, and I think the Black community has a pretty incredible, strong family structure that many white communities don't, in some ways, the way that I see it. So I'm driven and drawn to those associations, because I love love, and I love you know, I love forward thinking opportunities and care towards people. I don't see color. Maybe, I don't know why, but I don't. I'm sure I'm a minority in that, but I truly don't. I mean, I say, I don't care if you're purple with 3 heads. If you're a great person, and if you can do what I'm looking for you to do, or as a friend, you know, welcome to my world. Same with me. So it's this idea of what we see in blindedness, or the sight of where we're going and who we're talking to, kind of needs to stop, because people are people. You know, at the end of the day, we're blood, sweat, and tears, all of us, and we all have the same thing inside of us. We're all working the same way and walking the same way, if we're lucky to be walking. Now it's just this understanding of cognition, of understanding and appreciation of who we are for our differences. And I say just, but that's actually the hardest part for many.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, because, like, you know, and going back to you saying you don't see color, but you do, right? And I don't think that it's a bad thing that you do, because I think that, like you mentioned, you're being born in another country and coming here. If someone with true empathy and understanding of your situation might look at you, say that, okay, she was born somewhere else, and then and draw some conclusions from it. Mm-hmm. And I think those conclusions could be negative, or they could be positive, right? Mm-hmm. So mm-hmm. there are times when, especially, you mentioned going into communities and understanding what they're going through, you have to see color to do that, because they're feeling the color every day.
Yeah, you're right. Let me rephrase, don't see color. I completely see color, and I know what color we all are. And what I say is I don't think of that as a negative. I think of that as an opportunity. Maybe that's what I should have said. I see that as an opportunity to be more enriched because you're different than me and hopefully teach me something I never knew.
Yeah, and I think I don't remember exactly how we met, but it's I think that's the beauty of being in Detroit and having, you
Yeah.
know, meeting Chaldeans and Arabs and blacks and
Yeah.
whites and
Yeah.
people Polish descent and Eastern European descent. Like
Yeah.
there is a melting pot of people, and
Yeah.
if you're open to learning about different cultures, you can do that, and you can
Yeah.
do that in Detroit. And I think that makes you a better person for having done that.
Mm-hmm.
I oftentimes, and people naturally go into their families and into their silos, into things and places they feel comfortable in. But one thing that I try to challenge myself to do that I didn't always do, but I do. I started doing before I came to Detroit and have continued to hear is I'll try anything. I'll hang out with
Mm-hmm.
anyone. I'll talk to anybody about anything. I'll grab a
Yeah,
drink with anyone. And it's like it's not that.
that's
It's
great.
not that I don't love my community. I love my community, right? And it's not that I am not uh, willing to try others' foods. I am, like there's
Yeah,
so much to learn from other people, and
I agree.
to the extent that you can't. I would love to have a job where I traveled every day because I think that's the greatest form of education.
Yeah,
My
agreed.
law school loans notwithstanding,
Yeah.
um, I do think that the second best, if you can't travel all the time, is just meeting people and going into their communities and
Mm-hmm.
understanding your own community more, so that you can talk knowledgeably to others
Mm-hmm.
that might ask questions, like, "Oh, hey, I haven't been to Ghana. What's Ghana like?"
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've been to Ghana a few times, but at this point, my mom moved back there for a job. I go every year, right?
Hmm.
So I feel a lot more confident in 2020 talking about knowledgeably about Ghana than I did in 2012, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Same as far as Detroit. Like Detroit's an 80% black city. I hadn't spent time there because I didn't grow up there, but now I've done everything at least once, and
Mm-hmm.
some things more than once. And so my view is different than someone that grew up here, but
Yeah.
now I have an informed view. Same on the times I spent in Dearborn, or the times I spent in other parts of Detroit, the Metro Detroit area, learning about the cultures.
Mm-hmm. What is Ghana like?
Oh, Ghana's great. Ghana, it's laid back. Ghana was the first sub-Saharan African country to get independence in 56.
Incredible.
So Ghana is very prideful, similar to Detroit. It is the city, the capital, Accra. If you went there, you would think that you were in any European city.
Hmm.
The restaurants are good. The parties are good. The bars. There is a lot of inequality as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Mm-hmm.
The poor are very poor, and relatively, even to here, that I think the rich are very rich.
Mm-hmm.
But I think as development continues and there are more jobs going to Ghana, and there's not the taking of resources without remuneration that was happening through European countries slows and stops, and the
Yeah.
people of Ghana have control over their own natural resources.
Good.
Ghana was when it was a British colony, was the Gold Coast, so
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the world's gold comes from Ghana.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which is obviously a valuable commodity that was
Mm-hmm.
taken free for hundreds of years.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and even now, I could say that the contracts under which the gold companies are taking Ghana aren't fair market value, but at least they're paying something now, which is an improvement. But
Mm-hmm.
Ghana is so much fun, and it's on the
Mm.
water. There's beaches. There's lots of history. Uh,
Gorgeous.
I would recommend that anyone, as their first or second trip to Africa, go to Ghana.
Amazing. I had a trip to South Africa, probably '05, and went to the west coast of western part of South Africa as well, and through Johannesburg and Cape Town and Port Elizabeth. And oh my God, I mean, Africa to me is one of those places that I would love to spend more time in, because it's so diverse, and the history and the origination of life, and the culture, and I think it must be majestic being in
Yeah,
Africa.
I say the same thing. When outside of Ghana, I haven't been anywhere else.
Yeah,
Egypt, South Africa, Kenya, Uganda. There are so
yeah,
many great places, Morocco, so many great
yeah.
places. I find it hard to not go to Ghana when I go to the
I
continent.
hear you. I hear you.
So that's my only experience. But the continent is so rich, as you mentioned,
Yeah,
um, and worth taking many vacations to
yeah,
and exploring.
yeah. Will do. So tell us, back to Michigan. You've got a pretty cool appointment. You were just appointed to represent businesses through the MEDC, Michigan Economic Development Corporation, for the next 4 years by the governor. That's pretty monumental. I mean, that's huge. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank
So
you.
tell
Yeah,
us about that.
it's interesting. So the MEDC was a organization. It's the state's economic development corporation, and it's a public-private partnership. So there's some private funds and some government funds, and the
Mm-hmm.
goal is really to promote Michigan. So the Pure Michigan campaign that everyone's seen runs
Mm-hmm.
through MEDC. Then there's the community building goal of making sure that communities all around the state, that they're town centers, that they're places that people will want to live. And
Mm-hmm.
then thirdly, it's the job attraction, job growth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So making sure that
Mm-hmm.
businesses, large and small, look at Michigan as a place where they can do business and find the place within Michigan that fits their needs. So I had some interaction with them when we were going through our process of constructing and getting into the arena,
Mm-hmm.
Little Caesars Arena, and then our headquarters. So I knew about the organization before I was appointed to the board as
Mm-hmm.
board chair. But since then, I've really tried to take advantage of the diversity of opinions that we have on the board, talking to people about what they think their communities need, and
Mm-hmm.
and being a spokesperson on the board for Detroit to make sure that Detroit gets the resources that it needs to become the city that it can be
Mm-hmm.
in the 21st century.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. It's part public relations, right? You're selling the state to others who
Mm-hmm.
may want to be here. So you got to talk about how good Michigan is a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and then the different regions of Michigan. But it's also thinking through, what do we as a state need to be better and more competitive in the future?
Mm-hmm.
Are there programs that we need to enact that other states have that would make businesses want to come here, or make businesses start here, want to grow here?
Mm-hmm.
How do we keep the workforce that we need?
Mm-hmm.
We have tons of qualified kids at the
Mm-hmm.
state schools, Western, Central, Eastern,
Yeah.
Michigan, State, Northern, not to mention Wayne State and others. Like, how do we keep them from going to Chicago or New York when they're done?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Build that workforce, because if you look at Chicago, their companies are heavily populated with people from
Yeah. True.
and I think a lot of those people come home, whether it's to go up north for vacation or to at some point permanently when they want to start a family, but maybe is there a way to keep them from ever leaving,
Yeah.
right? And so some of those issues that are not public facing but internal, we spend a lot of time thinking about as well,
Mm-hmm.
which from the strategic point of view is intriguing, because I like difficult, hard to solve problems.
Yeah.
But there will also be tangible outcomes, positively or negatively, that we're measured against.
So, ironically enough, this whole health scenario that we're finding ourselves in, the pandemic, might actually work to your benefit, because the next 2-3 years, God forbid, but life will probably be a little different, and I'm assuming people will probably want to stick closer to home, just given the dynamics that we're living through now. So it might even be working to the benefit of the MEDC and the role that you have to help you keep folks here too.
Yeah, and so there'll be that group of people that wants to be closer to home base to see their families more often and feel less
Mm-hmm.
comfortable flying, so they'll want to be within driving distance.
Yeah.
It's also the group of people that, thinking about the future workforce, right? If
Mm-hmm.
offices for the next couple of years, and if it happens for a couple of years, maybe the foreseeable future, are remote, maybe do you choose to have your apartment in Chicago or New York that costs a couple $1,000s a month when you don't have to go be close to your job? Or
Mm-hmm.
do you choose a place in Detroit that might be more affordable,
Mm-hmm.
whether or not you have family here,
Yeah.
so that you can get up north quickly, or things like that, right?
Yeah.
I think Detroit in particular, and Michigan generally, could take advantage of remote work and the future of
Mm-hmm.
work
Mm-hmm.
as great places
Interesting.
to live where you
Mm-hmm.
don't have to be near your job.
Mm-hmm. You got your work cut out for you, my friend.
Yeah,
No lack. It's
thinking
not
through all
keeping
those
you.
machinations.
Yeah, you're not bored, that's for sure. And you're not boring, that's for sure. So I'm so happy to know you, Awenate. I mean that. I think of you often and where you've been, what you've done. I know that we see each other as time goes on, and I hope to see you again soon when all this wraps up in person. But awesome. This was, you inspire me, and you inspire me to think bigger and do more. So this is a really good chat. I'm really glad that we did this.
This is great. Thanks for having me. I think that if I couldn't have had the relative success or met the goals that I had without people and without a whole lot of luck. So I know that if I could do some of the things that I dreamt about doing when I was in high school 20 years ago, anyone can.
Yeah, fascinating. So we'll wrap it with that and see you soon, I hope. Take care of yourself. Go back to your construction in your new place, newer place. And thank you.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Of
Talk to you soon.
course. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.